Just wonder. Yeah, she hasn't muted. Okay.
Start my video somehow. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So sorry for the waiting. I was like actually in the last slide that Purva was showing. I was just thinking how the mechanism that Purva is proposing, which is like side chains and sub chains, could be relevant for your micro IP transactions for architecture, and how you can help architects to capitalize on the content they develop for the construction sector. Did you ever, you have some diagrams, but did you ever try to implement any of these in terms of implementing a working blockchain or a pseudo contract, a pseudo code for a contract?
Not really, but I'm partnering with a company built on the SV blockchain, which is 21E8. And we're taking this, we're actually targeting a similar problem because the design industry runs on information asymmetry, right? So copyright is essential to generating cash flow. So we try to solve this kind of dispute problem with a different orientation in that we think it's a social problem. So maybe the way to do it is to preempt the situation before your value is lost in the property. So how we try to do is to guarantee that we can dissect values into micro portions, and then we guarantee that at each stage, your value is instantly rewarded to you via smart contract. So smart contract automate all the microtransactions. So then you can have a safety net where your value, you can sustain cash flow at micro units instead of waiting for value to be realized at the end of, say, a different.
Okay. All right, sounds a lot. There is a token, and I think it's a Ethereum standard token called the Golan token. I keep referring to it, and it's basically, it's a token that uses, it's paid to your computer if your computer is being used as a render farm to create computer renderings. So basically, if you're not using your computer, you can leave it on, and it will be used as a rendering, we'll use the CPU and the graphics card of your computer to render images in a render farm, and you get paid for that. So that's a way to distribute computer power, and you get paid for that. So in the same fashion, you also have, there is another blockchain called Steam, which was a social media platform on the blockchain. Basically you'd get paid to retweet things, for example, or to like a picture. And it's a kind of micropayment. How successful it is, I don't know. It seems like it went up and then now it went down again, and it's in terms of popularity. But what it does is it crowdsources problems to a group of users or to a community. And I think this is quite a powerful concept. This is something really interesting, which is not blockchain, but could be, is some what they call serious games, or crowdsourcing hard problems through game interfaces. One very famous example is Folded. I don't know if you came across Folded. It's
no, but I think Google also has some ARG games. Like it's web-based, and then people are supposed to solve hard problems on the platform, which I think for the micropayment social media that you mentioned, Twitch is also working towards it. So it's anchoring every tweet on an immutable manner, and then so that's like a way to direct micro values. And also by combining mining power, so you essentially you have two separate chains, right? You have like the architects, designers at the front end, and then you have the miners at the back end. So I think we're also trying to look at this problem, but like, again, in a different angle. So combining mining with solving other forms of negotiation and decision-making problems, such as ranking information. So when you have a communal information environment for Beam that is public, then you need some sort of not proprietary ranking. So like designers can contribute to how they want to rank different objects. So through like a faulting mechanism, you can also contribute your GPU power. So instead of saying when I don't use my computer, I leave it on mining modes, it's more like if I like an architectural information, I click a button, I fold it up via the ranking list, and then it downloads small packages of files that's going to contribute my GPU power via, say, a MetaNet. So it's spotting the same problem, but like dissecting it in.
Yeah, so it's the crowdsourcing mechanism. Not so much that you'd be selling your computer power, but you can get micropayments to execute a task, right?
Yeah.
I think that's quite interesting. And I think some interesting models that you can look at is things like, Deliveroo and Airbnb and things like that. What is interesting is they've just happened. They simply happened. I mean, Airbnb didn't ask permission from anyone before they went live, and pretty much disrupt the hospitality industry, right? They just went live, and people start to use it. And the same was with Deliveroo and Uber Eats and so on, to the point that now it's absolutely everywhere. So I think there are lessons to be learned from this kind of distributed, because basically they are disrupting, they are like creating a new marketplace. So I think you can investigate the business models and see how it would fit. And of course, they're like the usual suspects, people like Kickstarted and so on, where you crowdsource, crowdfund projects. So, but you seem to be putting this almost like inside out, the crowdfunding mechanism.
I mean,
is a participatory funding.
I mean, my outset was that with any like digital content, the system itself gained a lot of value. So the network effect is immense, but then it doesn't redistribute value to the user who are actually contributing information. So that it's gonna impact cash flow for the participant. So I try to think of it as a ways to have a mutual rating mechanism. So instead of just the consumer rating service provider, it should be mutual. So then we can have a digital portfolio built upon a common application model where you can ensure both the financial rights and responsibility for the service provider during transactions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Darya, any comments on?
No, I was actually very impressed. I mean, as an architect, I have to tell you, if there's anything that actually sort of hits the, or actually tries to address the IPs, is exactly up, as I say, our street. So thank you very much for that. No other comment to make, really.
Yeah, we do see, so I have clients that they are very concerned with a accommodating environment and federated models. And I think I gave you this example before. I have a particular client here in London that he works, his practice is all about highly specialized cladding systems. And that they develop this in the build information model, and they have to upload this to this federated model. And everything, in theory, everything would go with it. But what I had to do for him is to create an algorithm that wipes out all the specification and metadata of a BIM families before this goes out to the accommodate environment, because they want to protect the intellectual property. Or we can do even like more complex things like take away all the parametricism of the BIM families. So the BIM family becomes like kind of just geometry. You cannot have the parameters change in the geometry, or update will be just what we would call dead geometry with no data. And the specification is served as a side document. So the decoupling the two things seems to be a mechanism to protect intellectual property. But what I think you are proposing is not to go backwards, because at the moment we have to go backwards to, kind of break technology in order to protect intellectual property. But what you are proposing is to go even faster, use the technology, but put the traceability there so you can trace where the intellectual property is coming from, and you can execute a micropayment. And I think this is, it's what we need.
I mean, I do see weakness in my research in that with any high velocity transaction and large scale collaborative contracts, risk allocation is probably at the forefront, which right now I'm trying to say like, okay, smart contract can have smart insurance contract where you have contractor licensing built into the system. So then you can distribute the risk at the same time you're creating the risk. So not taking risk as a bad thing, but like take it as a tool.
Yeah,
but that's
interesting.
I'm actually a bit afraid to say that, yeah. But I feel the urge.
Okay, I think Gavin has a question. Is that right? In the chat?
Yeah. So is this differentiable from e.g. Bernstein, or what about Ascribe, a now defunct blockchain solution for IP?
Sorry, I'm not particularly familiar with Ascribe right now, so I probably cannot, sorry.
Did you want to clarify?
It was just interesting because you started talking about IP. Obviously, IP, if I put my lawyer hat on once again, is a big legal issue. And I absolutely understand for architects, particularly so because it's, there's a lot of design, a lot of intellectual property and effort that goes into that design and making the building look the way it looks, and it is very unique and so on. And I just wondered, and apologies if I've misunderstood the technicalities of your what you're trying to achieve. There are a couple of blockchain-ish solutions out there, or there were. One is Bernstein, although that might be targeted at something slightly different around digital intellectual property, although maybe it's the same thing. And there was another one by, I can't remember his name, some Charles Pon or something, I think his name was, that started trying to do IP on a blockchain on a project called Ascribe. The idea being that you could somehow record something you'd created. You could record the fact that you were the author on a blockchain, and later, should that be challenged, you'll be able to say, well, look, I did it X years ago it's on the blockchain and it's immutable, so it's provably mine. Stop interfering with my copyright. But perhaps this is conceptually distinguishable. I wasn't sure.
So yeah, I think it's different, but provides, tell me if I'm misinterpreting, but this is more like a IP on the top. You kind of delivering the IP, and IP is being paid for as it is created.
I think the difference probably is in that I try to reverse the process. So instead of you first have a client, which is most likely the developer, who is going to hire an architect and then produce an IP, and then you have like a smart contract flow, you try to do a reverse auction. So you can have a metanet where a lot of different designers, they collaborate in the BIM environment to build up a common asset model. And then when the IP is matured and then gain enough network effect on a social media platform to crowdfund, you can actually reverse auction to a developer. And then once you auction your IP out, payments can be rewarded back to the initial investors during crowdfund stages. So that can benefit client in that your IP already gained network effect. So you don't have to advertise it the same amount as you are right now. And then it's like, okay, think of it as a fandom. So like Kanye West managed to harvest so much money from Instagram and being like a pseudo architect, we can actually reference how he managed to sustain this kind of cash flow via a fandom, and then how to make sure that clients and independent architects actually bridge communication with each other, not just the way they communicate, but also how they diverse value flows within these larger and smaller entities.
Are you familiar with the different types of auctions you have out there?
Probably not. I mean, I'm architect by training as well, so.
Yeah. So you have two. There are, I think, as I understand, there are three types of auctions. The type of auction that is set up like who gives more for something. It's like, and then you hit the hammer, and they say, okay, who gives more for this or for that? That's called an English auction, right? English auction is who gives more. A Dutch auction that comes from the tradition of selling flowers is who gives less. Yeah, so they give a price, and people bid a little bit lower than they were. So £1,000 for this batch of tulips, and then people offer 999 euros for that batch of tulips. And then the trick there is that you don't want to lower the price too much, because the more you lower the price, the more accessible that product is for others to bid. So that's a Dutch auction. And there is another one which is aligning. There is a name I forgot right now. I don't know if you, Gavin, you know that type of auction. It's aligning, is a matchmaking, is almost like a dating website type of thing. So I think what you are proposing is it's something that could be a Dutch auction on speculative architecture work. Because the advantage of a Dutch auction is the speed. Things happen very quickly. This behavior just emerged because they had to sell the flowers very quickly, because they had to ship very quickly to places. And this is quite interesting. The English auction, you might get an overall bigger value in the end. You might get like increase the price of something by 10-fold, 20-fold, or whatever it is, but it takes much longer. And it seems like what you're talking about is creative people come together, they create something, and then through like a network of value, that becomes that asset that has been created is mobilized to some sort of application. And it's quite interesting. It sounds very dynamic, but it seems like you already people already have the intention to create something, right? Prior to any real commission. It's almost that like doing speculative work, and the outcome of that creative process then is monetized somehow. So
Yes.
There's just to add to that, Abel.
Yeah,
I think you're quite right. There were some very good analogies. I know what you're talking about, but there's another element there, and it sounds a bit more like an arbitrage position as well, because you're trading off between apparent value in different areas. One is as the value as between the architect and the developer, but then the developer's onward use of that. So there's quite an interesting interplay in there, and I don't know how you might build a marketplace to accommodate that. I don't know. Talk to some hedge funds. I'm sure they'll happily talk you through.
it sounds a little bit like hedge funds.
Auction mechanisms for this, but potentially that's the type of elemental thinking you might need to consider.
Yeah, it will probably function like a futures market where there are option processes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. We are very curious to see the outcome of all this. Keep us posted. How we are doing in relation to time?
I think we've had a very good discussion. Yeah. So we can, this could go on for quite a while. It's very interesting, but I don't know what you want to do. It's 5:37 over here.
Yes.
How late is it over there, Provides?
It's almost 1 a.m., but actually I haven't.
So in Provides, I'm actually going to the print shop to get the books from the Design Computation Conference, so I can post them to you all who attended last week. So I have to go to the print shop, and then they close at, I believe, 5:30 today. So I promise to be there around 5:30. So I can hang around a little bit longer, but I would say, we on time, unless there are some burning questions or people want to contribute somehow.
No, just to say thank you very much, and it's both very exciting, and it'd be really good to see how they sort of develop and mature. So yeah, as Abel said, keep us definitely updated. It's it's really of interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.